Some breaking news out of Arizona, by the way. Police say an arrest has been made in connection with a break-in at the campaign headquarters of Democratic gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard joins me now from Phoenix. Vaughn, what can you tell us both about the break-in and about this arrest?
Right, Chris. This break-in took place, we were told, on Monday night at the campaign headquarters in the heart of central Phoenix of Democrat Katie Hobbs. The Phoenix PD responded to a call yesterday afternoon from the Hobbs campaign reporting this burglary. There were items, we are told, that were taken. It is not clear whether this was politically motivated or not. Neither the Hobbs campaign or the Phoenix PD are providing details about exactly what was taken from the campaign headquarters. There were a couple photographs that were taken from surveillance footage inside of this office that the Hobbs campaign believes is the individual here who is ultimately arrested, the person of interest in this case. At the same time, this individual was arrested. We are waiting for more details from the Phoenix PD, again, as to what exactly was stolen from the campaign headquarters and whether this was politically motivated. Carrie Lake pushed back explicitly last night, suggesting that anybody who would try to make the case that this was somehow politically connected or politically motivated would essentially amounting to an unjust campaign that had no evidence or no actual substantive backing to it. Of course, that is why we are waiting and pressing the Phoenix PD to provide exactly what their investigation has led to at this point, because we are just 12 days from this midterm election. And of course, when you hear a campaign headquarters being broken into, of course, there's reason to have heightened attention, heightened concern as to what led that individual into that specific building.
He's on foot. He's cracked out.
Get on the ground!
He's on foot. He's cracked out.
He's on fire!
Allen and Chandler Street.
Extinguisher!
Person 45th and Chandler.
He's on fire! He's on fire! Get extinguisher! Extinguisher!
On fire right now. Good boy.
Knew it wasn't going to be easy after, having a stroke after 5 months. In fact, I don't think that's ever been done before in American political history before, actually. By January, I'm going to be feeling even better. But he will still be a fraud.
Breaking news out of Washington moments ago. Capitol riot defendant Albuquerque Cosper Head sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attacking former Metro Police Officer Michael Fanone. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us now. Ryan, we know that Officer Fanone spoke in court today. What did he say?
That's right. He talked about the impact that this really has had on his career, how he would trade all of this fame and notoriety that he's gained after January 6th in a moment for him to return to policing, and talking about how he really, this took away his policing career. So a sentence of 90 months rather, was handed out in this case, just a bit short of what prosecutors had requested. They wanted a full 8 years, ended up with about 7.5 years there. So a significant sentence handed down in this January 6th case as the court sort of churns through a number of cases. We're also waiting on a verdict in the case of a Capitol police officer who actually tipped off another Capitol rioter to take down his Facebook post. And that jury is still deliberating in the same courtroom, actually, that this Albuquerque copperhead was sentenced to just under 8 years now in the assault on Mike Fanone, Lindsay.
Really quick, Ryan, is this the longest sentence we've seen so far coming out of the Capitol riot charges?
It's among them. 10 years is the longest sentence that we've seen in a separate case that was against a New York City Police Department officer, former New York City Police Department officer, but it is amongst the longest sentence, certainly, that we've seen in a January 6 case.
All right. Ryan Riley, thank you.
Last night, in the Pennsylvania Senate debate, Johnfetterman knocked himself out the second he opened his mouth.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania.
It only got worse from there. Fetterman's entire campaign's based on saying Dr. Oz is a carpetbagger who owns a lot of homes. And he's gotten some traction on that. But at the debate, you have to show off your policy chops. And Fetterman couldn't even spew slogans.
No, here's what I think we have to fight about inflation here right now. That's what we need to fight about, inflation. We all have to make sure that everyone that works is able to, that's the most American bargain, that if you work full time, you should be able to live in dignity as well, true. You know, but going to those kind of vocational schools, able to create a career to Wayne, reach a lot of high salary, and again, supporting to reduce those costs are critical too.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is blasting the West today, saying that it is playing a dangerous, bloody, and dirty game over Ukraine. Putin is also accusing the West of seeking global domination and fueling the war. NBC's Matt Bradley is in Kyiv. So, Matt, more tough talk from Putin here as Russia claims that Ukraine would use a so-called dirty bomb. Is the fear here that he would use this false flag premise as a justification for escalation?
Yeah, that's what the U.S. said. That's what Ukraine said, that if Putin is saying that Ukraine is going to use a dirty bomb, that probably means that Russia is going to be using a dirty bomb. And we heard earlier this week Putin directly saying that he had heard about this dirty bomb talk and sort of parroting what his defense minister had said earlier. But just now, and in fact, just in the last couple of minutes, we heard Vladimir Putin delivering yet another one of his kind of greatest hits speeches. And, he was talking about how it was the U.S. and the West who incited the war in Ukraine, not Russia. And he said that, basically Russia is at war with not just the West, but with Western elites, with a sort of decadent cosmopolitanism that you find in the West. This speech, Lindsay, it would have a pretty good home in a lot of CPAC conferences or maybe in some right-wing talk shops in Europe or in the West, where he complained about cancel culture. He brought up in the same discussion of the war in Ukraine, talk of transgender children and other issues that really have nothing to do with the geopolitical, really swirling interests that are going around in this region right here. Nothing to do with the men that he's sending to die here in Ukraine. So it was a bit confused, more than a bit rambling. And again, just the kind of thing we keep hearing, clearly meant to try to appeal to a certain sensibility in the West that it really is leaning right wing.
And you have some new reporting on Kherson. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this southern city, there's a really kind of a pregnant pause there right now. This is in the south. It's a city that was taken very early in the fighting by the Russians. It's been occupied ever since. And the people that I'm speaking to in Kherson say that the city has fallen very, very quiet. And that's because a lot of the Russian senior officers and their Ukrainian collaborators, pro-Russian Ukrainians, of whom there are quite a few, have been evacuated from the city. All of this in preparation for what the Russians and the Ukrainians are describing as a major battle to retake this city. And the people that I'm speaking to there say that they're constantly being told, even by cars rolling down the street with loudspeakers on them and by text messages on their cell phone, that they need to leave the city immediately. Now, that is obviously an incredibly ominous warning, especially when it comes on the heels of what you just mentioned, Vladimir Putin's talk of a dirty bomb and, some of the statements from the state energy company saying that they've seen movements around the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is occupied by the Russians, and which makes it seem as though the Russians are kind of looking at some of this spent nuclear fuel. We don't have any details of what exactly that would mean. But again, it's very hard to pin down exactly what the next move is going to be. But it looks as though with the Ukrainians bearing down on Kherson and the emptiness of that city, that we could see a blistering battle there that might not see the city survive. Lindsay?
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you.